Hello, YouTube. I'm sitting here after eating my post-workout meal, which was carbs, and I had a couple of spaghettis and decent turkey ground beef. A turkey grounded meat. It's pretty good. I did some cleans, and it's one more week until my competition. And it's also one more week until we talk about Errol Spence versus Bud Crawford. And I've been holding off from making this video because I think it's a really easy fight to predict. So much so that I won't be able to watch it because I have personal things going on that same day. I'll watch it obviously afterwards. I'll try to stay offline. But I don't think I'll be missing too much. And let me get into my explanation for that. For starters, we're talking about Terrance Crawford versus Errol Spence. If you haven't gotten the gist of it, 7:29. If you hear my dog in the back, he's being a little baby. That being said, who do I think is gonna win? I think Terrance Crawford is gonna knock out Errol Spence Jr. in 8 rounds. Yes, you don't see me laughing, you don't see me giggling. I genuinely believe that. Now you might be asking yourself, what's wrong with this guy? Who is he to say that? He doesn't even train. I do, but not in boxing. He's fat. Yeah, but it's for a sport. In sports, you're not 10% body fat. What does he know? Well, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to understand this. Errol Spence Jr. is a good fighter, and I don't take anything away from him. Not one bit. I think if you don't think Errol is a good fighter, you're just a little crazy. But I do think that Errol Spence Jr. is a basic fighter. And by basic, I mean beyond basic. Errol Spence Jr.'s main form of winning a fight is via pressure. His main form of winning a fight is his jab, and his main form of winning a fight is bringing the action to his opponent. In the Mikey Garcia fight, what did Errol do? Jab, because that's his best punch, and move forward and pressure. What did he do in the Sean Porter fight? Jab, move forward, and pressure. And what did he do in the Kell Brook fight? Jab, move forward, and pressure. Now, that's what he does well. He also does really good body shots, and he has an amazing gas tank. I think if you say otherwise, you're lying to yourself. Now, with that being said, what are Errol's flaws? And we'll get to Crawford in a second. Errol's biggest flaw is that he's a body puncher. He leaves himself wide open. His second biggest flaw is that he does his style fighter, his basic style of pressure, is good until it doesn't work. What I mean by that is that it's a style that works until it doesn't. I.e., if someone can take the pressure, if someone can take the pressure and counter, if someone isn't afraid to mix it up with you, and if someone can box, they can beat you. Now, let me give you a couple of examples. In the Kell Brook fight, this is years ago in 2017 at this point, and I think people forget what really happened in that fight. Kell Brook was winning, and I need to say this, and I need to stress this, winning the Spence fight. And people like to sugarcoat it. But Kell Brook was using a basic jab over Spence's jab. And Kell Brook was landing a good couple of rights and was smothering Spence's work. And he was winning the majority of the rounds. When Spence did catch up to him in the 11th and got the KO, Brook was ahead of the cards. That is facts. Go look it up on BoxRec. The reason I bring this up, though, is because if you look at the fight, Kell is jabbing his face off and landing rights at ease. It's not even hard for him. Now, what happens in that fight, I think, you got to give Errol's credit because he never stopped trying in his gas tank and everything I said before, but he was coming off his ass whipping from Triple G and cutting weight after gaining weight. He wasn't 100%, and I'm not giving Kell Brook an excuse, but I do think that is something people tend to forget. He was coming down 2 weight classes, and he was coming off getting his ass beat from Triple G. A prime Triple G at that in 2015. Right? So let's get to the next fight. Sean Porter. Sean Porter is a good fighter. I hate when people say otherwise. Sean Porter is a nice, tough, and rumble guy. And if you look at the fight where Sean was winning most of those rounds. And honestly, even the judges agree with me. The main reason Errol Spence won was because he landed a good shot on Sean Porter coming in. Now, you see, here's the thing. I'm not saying Errol is a basic pressure fighter. He can counter, but that's not his main game. He did a good shot on Sean Porter and basically won him the fight. But if you look back on the fight, Sean hurt Errol, Sean pressured Errol, and Sean made Errol lose a bunch of rounds. Okay. Those are two fighters, just for example, that you have to keep in mind with. I don't think, we know that Kell Brook and Sean Porter are not on Crawford's level. Now, those are his biggest wins. I don't really think Danny Garcia and Errol's resume is anything to cool or anything to smile about. I think a tune-up was a tune-up. Danny Swift Garcia has done nothing at welterweight. He won a vacant WBC belt from Robert Garcia. Robert Garcia. I'm dumb. From the Ghost, Robert Guerrero. Sorry. But I watched that fight when I was 15, and I thought Danny looked like ass. And then I saw him fight Errol, and Errol just did what Errol does, pressure. And even then, Errol didn't look 100%. Finally, Ugas. Errol's Ugas most recent win last year, over a year ago at this point. What's with Ugas? Ugas was beating, whose claim to fame really was beating Manny Pacquiao. But I was at that fight. You can look at the videos. Manny Pacquiao was 40 years old and 2 years inactive. So, of course, Ugas was going to get the upper hand on the older fighter, an inactive fighter. So, of course, he's going to win. And then Ugas decides to fight Spence. Good on him. Good for unifying the division. Thing is, what happens? Ugas just stands still, and gets his ass beat. But a key takeaway from that is Ugas, Kell Brook, and Sean Porter all hurt Errol in their fights. And I think something people lack is that when Ugas hurt Spence, sure, it was because of the mouth guard, but I didn't like how he reacted. If you look how he reacted in the Sean Porter fight, he sort of does the same thing. And even in the Brook fight, when he's kind of hurt, he does this weird thing where he sort of just like wipes out. He doesn't really know what to do, for lack of a better word. He doesn't hold. He sort of walks back, and I don't like that. Now, let's dissect Crawford. It's going to be a longer video. Now, people like to talk a lot of shit about Terrance Crawford, and I don't get why. If we really want to dissect his resume, Terrance Crawford is a 135-pound, 140 undisputed, and 147-pound champion. 3 weights, and undisputed in one of them, and one of the first undisputeds in the 4th belt era, aside from Taylor. Not Josh Taylor. I forget what the hell his name is. This is before my time in boxing. But the guy who beat B-Hop. And Alexander Usyk. Those were the 2 most recent 4 belt, the first ones to do it in recent modern times. So, that being said, let's dissect his resume. At 135 pounds, he fought Yuriorkis Gamboa, arguably in his prime, before anybody ruined him and anybody damaged him. We're talking about a Gamboa who, in his prime, sure, he was the smaller guy. Whatever. He fought Ricky Burns. That guy arguably was the #1 dude in the division when he fought him. That is no ifs, ands, or buts. Go back in time and look at it. And he beat him. He fought the guy who technically should have beat Ricky Burns in Ray Beltran, who became a champion after Crawford beat him. Just FYI. So he fought the #1, the #2, and the #1 and #2. Now let's talk about his 140 run. I hate when people bring up Ricky Burns, Ray Beltran, and Gamboa at 135 and don't give him the respect, because those are good wins. Sure, he got kind of rocked by Gamboa, but that was a prime Gamboa. Let's talk about his 140-pound run. Felix Diaz, an Olympic gold medalist, which was really good because he was getting a lot of hype on PBC back in the days after he beat Sammy Vargas, the Army veteran who never fought after. John Molina, just for example, that one French guy, but that one French guy won't count. I want to talk about the champions, the guys who actually matter. But I wanted to bring up Felix Diaz because he's an Olympic gold medalist and he made him look easy. And John Molina because everybody knows him. And there's a bunch of others, but the main 2 people I want to talk about is Victor Postol, who was coming off of a win from Lucas Matisse, and the best win of his fucking career. And Lucas Matisse was coming off beating Ruslan Provodnikov, coming off this pretty good comeback after losing to Danny Garcia, who I will give Danny credit. At 140, he had a great resume, not at 147. So don't at me in the comments. I do give Danny credit at 140. That being said, Victor Postol beat the living shit out of Lucas Matisse, and he was never the same again. And really underrated win. And then he fights Crawford after getting that great win, and Crawford easily beats him, outpoints him. Makes it a boring fight, sure, drops him once. But that's what you got to do as a champion. He knows how to box and keeps it basic and wins. Underrated win. Let's talk about everybody's favorite fucking person to talk shit about, and that's Julius Ndongo. This is how much of a boxing fan I am. This is before the days of the Zone in the United States. This is the days that only Showtime and HBO showed fights. Well, before ESPN was in the game and the Zone was just starting. But My point is, we didn't have access in the United States to worldwide events when Bud ended up getting undisputed on ESPN. Julius Ndongo beat Ricky Burns, who was a WBA champion in England, and did it so well that he didn't get robbed. Ricky Burns, and that was in the United Kingdom. Julius Ndongo also beat Eric Travanovsky in Russia in 1 round. That's 2 champions back-to-back that Julius Ndongo was supposed to lose against. 2 champions back-to-back who were not supposed to lose. The only other 2 belt holders in that freaking division. And Ndongo beat them both handily. And then he still had the balls to come to the United States and try to beat Terrance Crawford. Now, you can talk about Ndongo's post-resume, how he lost to Rigas Prograis, how he lost to basically any good name after. But I need to put context in this. At the time, Julius Ndongo was the number 2 or number 1 of the division, depending how you ranked Crawford at that moment. Just saying. And not to forget, because I forgot to talk about it, but Thomas Delorme for the WBO belt at 140. Sure, maybe Thomas Delorme isn't the best guy, but context-wise, he was champion. I hate when people talk about, what resume does Bud have? I just gave you a breakdown of 135 and 140. Now let me break it down for you at 147. 147, sure, he beats Jose Benavidez, not a big deal. I don't really rate him, but people did at the time. At 147, he beats Jeff Horn, who, in my opinion, didn't beat Pacquiao, but they robbed him. But some people think he did. But he did it in fashion, and he KO'd him. And after that, sure, you can argue his resume is kind of soft because ESPN was being locked out of giving him any good fights. Thurman said $10 million. Danny Garcia turned down 2. What was he going to do? So he kept busy. He fought Mean Machine, which is a good win. Underrated, Olympic gold medalist. Sure, Mean Machine dropped him. Sure, Mean Machine has stupid power, but you guys see how good Mean Machine is? People like talking shit about Agnes Kavalaskis. I can say his name, unlike 90% of you, because he's a good fighter. Look at what he did after. He dropped Virgil Ortiz Jr. Don't believe me? He unofficially dropped him the same way he dropped Bud. He has fucking power. And after he lost to Ortiz, he bounced back by beating Michael Fox, who got robbed by Gabriel Maestro. So Michael Fox should have been WBA regular or interim belt. And it should be Mean Machine now. But people don't bring that up because they don't know their boxing. They just know the surface level stuff. Now, that being said, he fought Kell Brook. Sure, I think Kell Brook was washed, honestly, when Spence fought him. I won't give that past to Crawford either. He was keeping busy and he fought a washed Brook. But I will say he fought Porter. And don't give me that bullshit that Porter didn't train. He was going into that fight expecting to win a belt. Whatever he says otherwise, he was in shape, made weight, and he tried his ass off in that fight. And you can clearly see it. And the reason I say that is because a lot of people try to dismiss the Porter win. Bud, and Porter and Spence are very similar, is the reason I'm getting to this very point. Porter comes in, uses his jab, and dog rushes you. Spence does the same thing. What did Bud do? Well, if you look at the numbers, Bud took less punches than Spence versus Porter. Bud, sure, probably lost a couple early rounds because that's his stick, but figured him out and just freaking dropped him twice, and then his dad was like, yo, that's it. We're not going to do this. And he showed his dog. Because Crawford said, yo, I'm losing this fight. Let me finish him. And he did exactly that. Now, you put Errol Spence Jr. and Terrance Crawford in the same ring. Who's going to win? A really good basic pressure fighter, or a guy who's shown to be able to be adaptive? A guy who can do orthodox and southpaw. A guy who can fight on the back foot. A guy who can box. A guy who can show you power at any moment. A guy who can walk you into punches, and a guy who isn't afraid to mix it up if he has to. Sure. And I'm not even saying that Errol isn't a good fighter. Sure, his jab is good, but you don't think Bud's going to counter the jab? Sure, he has a great engine. He throws beautiful body shots, but you don't think Bud is ready for those body shots? The minute Errol throws that thing underneath, his face is wide open. What do you think is going to happen with that left hand of Bud? It's not going to move? It's ridiculous how many people think, oh, Bud is not going to win. I know the bookies think he's going to win, but if you go in boxing groups, it's just triggering. And I haven't even brought my final reasoning. And that's after breaking down the resumes and stylistically telling you why Bud's going to destroy him. I'm telling you right now, Errol Spence Jr. has so many miles on his odometer, it's ridiculous. It's like if you were trying to ride your 1998 freaking Crown Victoria Ford down the street in 2023 with over 129,000 miles. It just ain't happening, buddy. And the reason I say that is this. People like to forget, and I have evidence to back what I'm about to say. Errol has not been the same since the car crash. He almost died. And he's lucky to be alive, and God blessed him to be alive. Especially for being stupid like he was drunk driving and going 1,000,000 miles an hour on a Ferrari. That said, I really want to stress that he's lucky to be alive. The conditions they found him in was not okay. In post car injury, you can hear the words in his mouth slur, and it's not something you can ignore. When he was training to fight Pacquiao, hence why I was at the Pacquiao fight versus Ugas, because I really wanted to see it, because Pacquiao versus Spence was stylistically a good fight, even if Pacquiao was out of the ring. Ugas versus Pacquiao stylistically was never going to be. Pacquiao always struggled with pure boxers. That being said, I wanted to see it because of the post-car crash. But during that training, Spence's eye literally fucking stopped working, right? We're talking about this guy's eye falling out of his head in sparring, in regular sparring, where the punches aren't going to be hard as fuck, where the guys are just training. Sure, they'll be a little hard, but like not in compared to a real guy who's trying to knock you out, right? He's not been the same, and people don't want to admit that. If this was in 2017 and Bud had just moved up and just became welterweight champion and Spence was going to fight him, yeah, Spence probably is the favorite. But this is 2023, guys. And if you think Errol, with all the miles on his clock, fighting once every 2 years, having injury, having car crash, having the stylistic disadvantage is going to beat Bud Crawford, get out of here. Now, all of that being said, I want to tell you my money is going to be placed on Bud Crawford TKOing Errol Spence Jr. in 8 rounds. The fight in the beginning will look kind of close. Errol starts really fast. Rounds 1, 2, 3, and 4. Do not be surprised Errol wins them. Do not be surprised. I'm telling you right now. Rounds 5, 6, 7, 8 is game over. Bud's going to figure his timing. Bud's going to figure how to counter the jab. Bud's going to figure how to counter his body shots. And once Errol Spence feels the power, it's over. He'll start doing what he does in all his fights when he gets hurt, moving back and not knowing what to do. And then eventually in the 8th round, he's going to try coming for the body again. Left hand hits his eye. I wouldn't be surprised if that stops it. That's my prediction. Call me a Bud Tard. Call me a Bud fanboy. Call me an Errol hater in the comments. I'm just giving you my 2 cents. Anyways, guys, that's my 17.5-minute breakdown. I'll see you after the fight. Realistically, I won't watch it the day of because I have prior commitments that are sadly more important than this fight to me, since I kind of feel like I know what the outcome's going to be. But that being said, I'll be sure to watch it when I can. Have a good one. Don't forget to subscribe.